Welcome back to x737 Air Manager overhead panel that I've been working on. I'd like to update you on what I've done since the last video. Been working on the overhead panel, and as you can see, we're making progress. The panels that we've completed so far are pretty much this whole column here on the right, and we were up to here. So today I've completed these two additional panels for the window heat and the probe heat, and for the wing and engine anti-ice. These panels, let me show you. I'll start with the window heat. This is the window heat panel that I've done. Just basically a pretty simple panel. We have switches for the probes, and you can see on and off, and if I turn those both on, you can see there's the pitot systems on both sides of the aircraft. There's an elevator probe in a alpha vane heated, and also a temperature probe in an aux pitot. And that's very simple on-off switch. When they're powered, the light's off. When the power's lost, they're on. Of course, they're all pressed to test. Now the window heat has two settings, two sets of lights. There's an on light which shows there's powering the heating elements in the windows. As you may know, the windows need to be heated not only for anti-icing and defogging on the inside, anti-icing on the outside, but also they need to be heated to make them a little more flexible in case of a bird strike at low altitudes. Actually, below 10,000 feet, the manual says 250 knots maximum. That happens to be, in the US, that's the limit anyway, but that's because of bird strike strength. As those windows get cold at high altitude, if they're taken into lower altitude, and while they're still very cold, they're brittle and more susceptible to damage and breakage. Now these windows are not that easily broken. I forget if there's 3 or 4 layers, but there's outer layer, an inner layer, a filler layer. The heating wires are almost invisible unless you look very close, but there is wiring inside there that creates the heating that keeps them warm. Now, on one occasion on a flight I was on, we had a window, we could see the light, little wires started to short out inside the window, and we could see like red, it looked like a hot filament on an old style light bulb, incandescent light bulb, and shortly thereafter the window popped and one of the panes broke. It scares the heck out of you when it goes, but actually they're not, you don't require all the different layers for safety. So anyway, I'll turn these on, and you can see there is an on for each one. Also, there's an overheat for each of the windows also, meaning that the temperature is too high. Now I'll show you one last gauge here. This is called the one last switch, I should say. There's a test switch to test the overheat, because there's really no way to test that. So what that does is it simulates an overheat condition. And then there's a power test. Now you might say, why do we need a power test when we can just turn these things on and see that the power is working? Well, if the window on the side of the sun happens to get heated up to a point that it's at operating temperature, the thermostat will cut the power to that window. Even though the switch is on, it'll temporarily cut the power because it's at temperature. And the power test is just so that you can make sure, test the continuity of the system and the light too, if that's not working. So that's the basic system, very simple. Took a little more time than you might think to build this though, because of all the lights. Now one more thing I want to show you is the engine anti-ice. Of course, this panel down here, again, a very simple panel. You can see there's a left valve open and a right valve open for the wing anti-ice, and then there is a cowl valve open for the left and right engines. Also a cowl anti-ice valve, which shows there's overpressure in the cowling. Now the cowling is the lip of the engine. The only part of the engine that's de-iced on the 737 NG is the outer lip of the engine, the part that looks like shaped like a leading edge, but you know, the circular lip. And because of that, that's the only thing that's de-iced, that needs to be de-iced. So when this valve is open, it puts hot air out there. Now the wing anti-ice, it ices, it diverts high pressure hot bleed air to the leading edge of the wing and to the actual metal structure there to warm that up and to either melt ice, or better still, to stop any ice from forming. It is called an anti-ice system, but it does have the ability to remove ice up to some level. Now how this works is, as you'll watch these switches, as I turn them on, I'll turn the wing anti-ice on, and you'll see the valves go bright, and then they go to dim on. When I turn them off, they go to bright, and they go to dark. When they're dark, it means that they're off. When they're on in this position, that with the dim illumination, that means they're on. The bright indication, the bright indication means that you're going to see it here. That means that the valve is not in agreement with the switch. So when I turn it on, temporarily the valve hasn't closed yet, and once the valve reaches close, and when it's in agreement, then I get the correct indication. When I turn it off, it goes to bright because the valves aren't closed yet, and once they close, it goes to dark. I hope that's clear. The engine anti-ice works almost the same way. You can see it goes to bright and then dim, and when I close it, it goes bright and then off. So that's how that works. Normally, when we expect icing, the icing conditions, which generally is below 10 degrees centigrade total air temperature, we'll turn on the engine anti-ice, and that will give us protection against the icing. The cow anti-ice, as I said, is just a light that comes on to tell us, hey, this thing is there's too much pressure being directed to that cowling. It could cause high temperature and damage, and, you know, soften it due to the high temperature and make it susceptible to hail damage. Just basically, that's the purpose of that, to tell us that we have too much pressure going there. So anyway, that's what I've done. Not too much this week, but still making progress. Wanted to show you the overall panel now with those two added. And I'll go back to a see if I can get back to a wider view here. As you can see, we have here's where those two panels that we just built are included, and so as you can see, what we need to add now are these two panels here where I'm moving the mouse. The navigation selector panel, where you select the nav source for either left or right. All the instrumentation has the ability to, if one system goes out, to put both systems on the working system. Normally they each work on their own system. And then we have the flight controls, which is somewhat complex, and I'll address that in the future when I get that done. Then we need to do, I'm going to get rid of this now. The last thing we'll be doing is the next thing we'll be doing is this panel in the center here. You can see it has a wiper. Well, that'll be easy, just duplicating. Just a few switches, only a few even lights on this one, so this one will be fairly easy to do. And then we'll do the lighting panel lastly, which will just have you can see most of the landing and taxi lights, the APU start switch, the engine starter switches, and then some more lights for external lights, wheel well light, wing lights, anti-collision light, strobes, and the logo light. So that's where we are right now. And look for future updates. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to do that, and we'll be sending an email then from YouTube when the next installment's ready. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon.